Welcome back. This is Friday lunchtime. The political party funding bill was first passed by Parliament in June 2018. However, the Act is still waiting implementation. All that's needed for the Act to come into effect is for President Ramaphosa to set the date of implementation. So, why is there a delay? What are the consequences if he fails to put pen to paper? Joining us now on Friday lunchtime with a view on this, Mike Law, Senior Associate at the Paternoster Group. Mike, good afternoon to you and welcome. Do you have a view as to why there is a delay in this process?
Hello, Jeremy. Thank you very much for having me on your show. Yeah, it's hard to say exactly what the delay is from our side. Obviously, Parliament has done its job here. There's two pieces of legislation that have been passed. The regulations are ready to go, and all we're waiting for is for the President to tell us from which date this legislation will be effective from. So it's hard to say. There's a small amendment, I think, to one of the regulations that I'm hearing about that needs to go through the Home Affairs Committee, but that particular amendment shouldn't stall the Act in its totality. The Act can still operate without that amendment. So there's various reasons to speculate why it's still being delayed.
That's procedural, but there could also be a political dynamic to this, surely. The conventional wisdom would suggest that there might be some vigorous pushback from within the ruling party.
Look, that's certainly one of the potential reasons that we can speak about. Obviously, when the ANC decided finally, I think it was in 2017, where there was finally momentum behind this new piece of legislation, the economic situation was much different. I think perhaps that they were hoping that there would be a little bit more money in the public purse to allocate to political parties in terms of the provisions in the Constitution and the law which allow parties to receive money from the public purse. And since then, also this culture of transparency, accountability, and new provisions in the party about doing business with the state. This all comes at a cost, of course, for the party's donor pool. So this is one of those pieces of legislation where you would see that the ANC and the DA or the big parties are quite happy for it to let it lapse as long as possible. And, it's only really to speculate what that precise answer is.
The legislation, assuming that it does become law at some point, do you think it's going to be difficult to enforce, given that there are many ways, I imagine, around the balance sheet?
Yeah, of course. I was fortunate enough personally to work very closely on this piece of legislation and also to work on some other projects around the world in political finance, regulatory regimes. And I won't bore you with the details, but suffice it to say this is one of really the best pieces of legislation in this area in the world. It's a piece of legislation that South Africans can be very encouraged by and very proud of, and it sets to set us apart as one of the most transparent systems of party disclosure on paper, of course, as you say. And the gripe with these types of laws across the world is enforcement, is implementation. It's obviously, as soon as you see a piece of legislation on paper, if you're affected by it adversely, your next question becomes, how can I get around it? So the IEC's got a very big enforcement mandate here. And that will be how this legislation will live or die, based on how seriously it's enforced, both by parties and by the IEC.
Michael, just a quick one. We have a local election next year. Do you think there's a prayer that this is going to be signed into law by then?
Certainly that was the hope. I think everyone hoped that there was initially talk, I think a little bit unrealistic talk at the start of the process that they were hoping to have it in place by the 2019 election. But the hope was 2021. I think there's still that possibility that some parts of the Act will be operational by 2021, but obviously this is going to be a very, very hard thing to set up from a practical point of view, and it's going to take a long time for the wheels to start turning and for the thing to get off the ground. So the chances of us seeing a fully operational piece of legislation here in time for the 2021 election is going by the day, but I'm still hopeful that some of it will be in place.